Hello, Diane. It's a pleasure
Hello,
to be with
Nell.
you.
Hello, Nell. It's so nice to be with you.
Such a treat. This is a joy. This book, The Smallest of Joys, is not small. And I want to make sure people hear the subtitle, How to
Okay.
Create Your Own Magic. Yes. Let your best be enough and find contentment exactly as you are. Amen. All of
Yes,
that.
yes, absolutely, 100%.
Thank you for writing this. We're going to get into the backstory and the meat
hmm
of it and all of that.
No.
Um, but just how are you right now? How are you doing right now today?
I I'm actually doing so well, and it's been such, I'm not a person like I talk a lot about living a very small life, and my life has really expanded, right? With this book. But I've met so many amazing people and had so many wonderful conversations, and I'm so honored that people actually want to talk to me and hear what I have to say. What a gift, right?
So cool. Absolutely. Well, I think, and you maybe even say this in a way, I'm sure it's one of my dog-eared pages, of which there are like 82. Um,
Oh.
but the gift that is the gift, right? By
hmm
being brave and creative and generous to share a
hmm
gift, you're
hmm
getting this gift, and it's a
Absolutely.
chicken and egg thing, like which was a
hmm
gift first, I don't know.
Yep, yep, yep,
But
yep.
that's how I see
It's
it for
it's a
sure.
it's a instead of a negative spiral, it's a gift spiral, a giving spiral, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful
hmm
thing. So a little backstory. You say you did not intend to become a maybe New York Times bestseller, maybe, not jinxing anything, maybe. And you imagined that though you would start posting some of your
hmm
vintage, your beautiful
Yep.
things that we're glimpsing and we have seen.
hmm hmm
When did it become like life-saving wisdom?
I think, yeah, I will tell you, there was a video early on that really crystallized for me the change. And I'd been doing maybe videos, maybe 3, 4, 5 months, right around in there. And I welcomed people, came out my front door, welcomed the viewer up onto my front porch, and offered them tea and a cinnamon roll. And I said to them, "Tell me all about your day. I have all the time in the world for you." And I have goosebumps when I
I
remember
just
it.
got goosebumps.
Yeah, because so many people, especially like teenagers, but people of all ages said that they did not actually know that people really talked like that. They had never had anybody speak to them like that. And and then so many people whose families had cut them off and and I think so many older women, this is a little segue, I hope you don't mind, but so
Please.
many older women say that they feel like they become invisible.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
I have not found that to be true at all. I
Mm,
think we're invisible because we're no longer really, sexually attractive,
mhm,
right? We're no longer that kind of, but I think what we have to give as older women is just, it's what the world needs,
A thousand
that,
percent.
mm-hmm,
I was headed to meet my mom for lunch on this weekend
mm-hmm.
after having read your book and then listening to a
hmm
great podcast that you did,
hmm
Mind Body Detox, I think,
hmm
really
Yep,
thoughtful
yep.
conversation. And I got to my mom, who is a massage
hmm
therapist and a body
Oh,
worker and
wow.
deeply wise and
hmm
spiritual.
hmm
Lucky me.
mm
But I was saying, I think she was talking about some things in her work. She's very active in her community in the
hmm
town council and the
hmm
lake that they manage. Um, but I was saying, taken from your insights in this experience, I think the world is so hungry for mothering right
It
now. And no
100%.
shade to moms. I just think
hmm
we've increased the demands on moms so unreasonably that
Mm-hmm.
so many of us are left without some of that I have all
Yeah.
the time in the world for you because
Yes.
moms can't, literally
Mm-hmm.
can't, no matter how much they
Mm-hmm.
want to.
And I think women are, so many women feel like their importance is uh, being productive and being successful and being go-getters, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff, go, 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 and, being physically fit and strong, all those things are wonderful, right? But um, we also have such a bank of love within us, right? And we are uniquely created, uniquely skilled at giving that out to the world if we're willing to do it. And
Yeah.
then when we're brave enough to do it, then we see that that's what so many people need. And that's transformative to us,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's that gift upward spiral
Yep,
again.
yep,
Yeah,
yep, yep.
totally. So the cinnamon roll cracked it all open and
Yes.
the masses
Mm-hmm.
came to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, have you just always been this fabulous little joy factory? Was that totally natural for you?
No. I actually talked to my mom a while back and I said, "Have I always been this way?" And she said, "You've always been um like very kind. You've
Mm,
always been very," which I don't know. I can see all the meanness inside me, right? But she said that was how I always was, very sensitive and that kind of thing. But I struggled mightily
mm,
with anxiety and depression, like really severely. And I think when my marriage broke up and I was left alone with a house full of kids, little kids, my youngest was an infant, right? Yeah, and my oldest was like 14, so I had like, whoa, and all different needs, right?
totally.
And
Different
yeah, and
psychologies,
mm,
different, yeah.
right, right,
Yeah.
each requiring a different kind of energy.
Yeah.
And excuse me. And I remember feeling like the way I described those years is being in a whirlpool, right? And then, maybe every couple months or so, my head would come up out of the water. I'd get a little gasp of air or two, and then I'd go back down again, right? So that was when, I talk in the book about like sit and stare time and how that started, right? Sitting in my car, with my paper cup of coffee from the drive-through, right?
Two
And
creams.
yes, you're right. You got it. You got it. My two
I got
creams.
your coffee order.
You
When we
do.
meet, I'll bring it right.
But I can remember I didn't have to be in there till like 7:30. I didn't have to be at my desk till like 7:30. And it
Uh-huh.
was like 7:25 and I was like, wow, I'm just gonna sit here, right? And I just sat there and let my mind just kind of like enjoy that warmth of that cup and the smell and the steam. And it was raining and like the rivulets came down on the windshield and they'd like join and separate. And it was like so beautiful and almost like hypnotic, right?
Mm,
And so I gave myself those minutes
mm,
and somehow it strengthened me.
mm,
Somehow that centering, it gave me, instead of like that frenetic, it kind of like short circuited that. And so that was the start of it. And I think I talked too about when you find your joy, holding tight with both hands, right?
mm, mm,
And that is when we are dealing with depression and
mm,
anxiety
mm.
and, bills, unpaid bills and kids that aren't doing well. You know, there still is joy in the midst of all that.
Yeah,
And we do need to hang on to it. We need to find it. We need to center ourselves on it. We need to hang on to it.
yeah,
It's not it's not something that comes naturally to most of us.
yeah.
Yeah.
And what, say a little more because I get that. And, I think sometimes the alternate scenario that I can picture there
Mhm.
is that grasping of control that we sometimes
Mm,
try to have,
right.
or like the grabbing onto
Mm-hmm.
shoulds around
Mm-hmm.
happiness or joy of like
Mm-hmm.
what it should look like. And we
Yep.
all know that, especially these days, things are changing,
Mm-hmm.
changing,
Mm-hmm.
changing.
I
And so we
think
can't hold on that way. Say more.
no, yeah. I'm when I say hold on to it with both hands, I'm thinking like through that day, I
Mm,
remember.
mm.
Through that day, I would remember the the raindrops coming down.
Ah,
I still can remember those
ah,
raindrops coming down on that windshield. And so
ah.
when I say hold on to it with both hands, I'm not saying, grasp it and just like this, muscle it. I'm saying, hold, and hold it inside of you
Yeah.
and go back there. Like
Mm.
you can go back there and revisit those moments of beauty and
Build a little
joy.
joy chest. I love that. That's,
Absolutely,
yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so from then to now,
Hmm.
obviously some of your circumstances have changed. The
Yeah,
kids have
yeah.
grown because that's what they
Hmm.
do. And
Yeah.
you've given this gift and been given
Hmm.
gifts.
Hmm.
But as we know, joy is sort of apart from those
Hmm.
circumstances. So,
Yep.
what has your joy journey been? How has the joy chest been building, and how have those practices evolved since then?
I think I've really I remember my father years ago when my children were young and when
Mm,
I was in the midst of all that, he got a cancer diagnosis. And
mm,
at that time, he said, the doctor said it was going to be like months, just like a couple months. It was like death was imminent,
yeah.
supposedly. And spoiler, he got experimental treatments and he lived for like 20 more years. So that was wonderful. But in the midst of all that, I can remember thinking, like envisioning my life as like two streams. There
Mhm,
was the stream of the dread and the grief, right? Of my father's, what his illness was going to impact on him and
mm,
us, right? And then on the other stream was though you have little children,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
That you still have to get up and make breakfast. You still have to laugh at their jokes
mhm,
and make sure their clothes match and they get to the daycare and everything at the right time. So
uh,
I think that we don't often realize it, but we have streams within our lives and
mm,
um, we can live conflicting realities at the
mm,
same time,
mm,
and they don't have to negate each other,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
Right. I mean, I lived that grief of my father
Yeah,
and also lived the joy of my children
yeah,
simultaneously,
yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite essays is This or That, which is what I
Mm,
think you're getting at of, in
yeah.
the
Yep.
book you describe, like it is this, it is the
Mm-hmm.
vintage and the
Mm-hmm.
doilies and the, cinnamon muffins.
Mm-hmm.
And make no mistake, it is social
Mm-hmm.
justice and
Absolutely.
pretty, robust
Mm-hmm.
care about
Yeah.
trans folks and
Mm-hmm.
racial issues, all the
Mm-hmm.
things that all the
Mm-hmm.
the things that are afflicting so many humans right now, and
Yeah.
that so beautiful, really
Oh, thank
time
you.
again, timely and
Hmm.
unique, I think. Do you think that's been part of the response to your work?
I do.
Mm,
I think what it has done is people need to know who you really are
mm,
in order to be safe with you,
mm, mm,
right? And so I've been free with that information
mhm,
because that is my goal is for people to feel safe. And that has really angered a lot of people, right? And I've
mm,
lost many, 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 oh gosh, so many followers because of my stand-up, but that's okay.
mhm,
One thing I think I said it, I should know this, but I think I said it in the introduction, or I might have said it at the like the end one, but that my community taught me
mm,
how important it is to stand up for the vulnerable
mhm,
and how costly it can be to stand up for the vulnerable and
mhm,
how worth it is to
mhm,
stand up for the vulnerable.
mhm.
Yeah.
Mm. It goes to something else in that I think that first of all around joy that
Hmm.
I'm thinking of this from with my lens of subtraction. I'm like, what do we have to subtract to get back to
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
brilliant glowing nugget of joy that sustains us? And one thing that you talk about too, very real right now, is this kind of shame of having
Hmm.
joy in a
Hmm.
moment when so
Yeah.
many people are unfairly suffering like
Hmm.
existentially.
Absolutely. I think, I come back to, I remember there was a video that I did where I talked about how easy it is to get caught in doom
Mm,
scrolling, and
mm,
how we need to not do that,
mhm.
and how instead of doing that doom scrolling, we need to go and do something like real in our
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
And one woman just was so upset by that, right? And the thing is, I understand where she was coming from. Like she and I share virtually all of the same like political and social views. But she was feeling like her rage was her power, right?
Mm,
But I think that that comes from, first of all, being white women and feeling like our rage, our tears are more, especially potent.
mhm.
But they're not.
Spoiler alert.
They ain't, right? Yeah. But I think she felt that rage, she could not separate
Mm,
the permission to feel joyful
mm,
from the oppression that she saw others,
mm,
suffering. And and I understand it. I mean, she
mm,
was very angry and she was very hostile, but I understood her. Do you know what I mean? I
mhm.
really understood her.
Yeah.
But I think, I have been so fortunate in my life. I've adopted children, black children, and black women especially have come alongside me
Mm,
and helped me to parent
uh-huh.
those black children. And that's been an incredible gift. But, I mean, I think of the history of even the civil rights movement and
Mm,
everything,
mm,
as serious and powerful as that was, those people allowed themselves joy, you know. They allowed themselves joy. And um I think that's the big thing, that I think we look at joy as indulgence,
mm,
but it's not. Joy is empowerment. Joy is what
uh-huh.
we do to enable us and empower us to
Uh-huh.
do our important work, you
Yeah.
know.
I think that's a beautiful framing because I bet that woman isn't alone. I mean, I know, I
Mm-hmm.
started in
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit and so I'm
Mm-hmm.
adjacent. I remember that world. And I think there are
Mm-hmm.
plenty of folks out there who move things
Mm-hmm.
with rage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just make that case a little more. It's empowerment, like really in this moment on the issues that we care
Mm-hmm.
most about that are, again, matters of life and death for humans
Mm-hmm.
we love.
Yeah.
Is joy
Yeah.
the right path?
Well, I think we have to think, what is our end goal,
Mm,
right? What
mm,
is our end goal? Is our end goal to be filled with rage because we have a right to be rage filled, to be filled with rage because the wrong is so wrong,
mm,
right? All of those are valid, right? But is that going to produce any change,
mm,
right?
mm,
So if our end goal is to just live in that injustice,
mm,
then our rage is that's a good thing to do, right? But if our goal is to um, make the world better,
mm,
if our end goal is to um, change things for the vulnerable, especially,
yeah.
then we need to do what we can do to strengthen ourselves,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh,
And that rage doesn't strengthen you, it just saps
it's
you.
exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
if you allow yourself joy, then you are able to do the things that need to be done because you're not
Mm,
exhausted.
mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Really helpful. I think that's
Mhm.
a good reminder of, it's a long
Yeah.
journey toward
It is
justice.
it is so hard because and I struggle with it myself, when you see so many, like the school bombing of those little girls. I mean, how do we how do we justify enjoying our coffee on the front porch, right? How do we when we think of families that have lost multiple children, how do we? And I think the only way I can make peace with it is that I truly want to make change.
Mm,
I truly want
mm,
to make things better.
mhm.
And I need to give myself emotionally what I need to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It links to another theme that I love, which is talking about self-care, which
Mm.
has gotten very industrialized,
Yeah.
complex bubble baths and expensive supplements and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
But you describe it as making life gentler for your future self,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
not necessarily even what feels really good right now,
Yeah.
which kind of reminds me of that,
Mm-hmm.
joy as self, as kind
Mm-hmm.
of building that
Yep.
endurance
Yep.
or that
Yep.
strength.
Yeah. I think, and that is the difference. True self-care, a lot of the time, is very uncomfortable in the moment, right? It's washing the dishes when we're exhausted. Yeah, because tomorrow morning when we get up and we come down to a clean kitchen, it's so much better, right? And we're so much more equipped to do what we need to do.
Mm.
Yeah.
How is that? I mean, is that a form of discipline or kind of strategy almost? How did you come to
Uh,
that?
I think I came to it by not doing those things and suffering the repercussions,
Mm.
right? That I think is how I came to it,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
not that bubble baths and binge watching with a box of chocolates doesn't have its moments, right? Right? But is that really caring for ourselves?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
indulging, and indulgence is wonderful and it has its moments, but
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I love too your encouragement for people to really become themselves, whether it's
Hmm.
what they need in
Hmm.
self-care or their weirdnesses and what
Yes,
brings them
yes,
joy.
yes. Well,
How do we do that?
I think that's the key. And I talk about that with finding joy too, like the things that give me joy, like the breeze or the steam coming out of my coffee. That could be meaningless to somebody else,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
so what I encourage people to do is to just spend time, go through their day or their week, paying attention to when they get that little flicker, right?
Hmm.
And that will tune them into the things that will give them joy. Like,
Hmm.
I remember I started a garden last year, which I need to plant this year. And I'm not a big
Almost
gardener.
time.
Yeah, I'm not a big gardener, but but there were so many people oh my gosh, that gives them so much joy and it's their passion, right?
Yeah.
So, um, you know, and lean into those things,
Uh,
right? Whether it's a beautiful car going by or, the little sprout or something, lean into those. And that's how you teach yourself about yourself,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That seems like such an important takeaway too from your work is this idea that joy can be anywhere in any
Mm-hmm.
moment, no matter how
Yep.
dark. And it's not natural, right?
Mm-hmm.
Necessarily. So it gives me
Right.
that sense of like, hold on to it. You have to
Mm-hmm.
teach yourself. I love that point. You have
Mm-hmm.
to teach
Mm-hmm.
yourself what,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not just rainbows and unicorns.
No,
Like
it's
maybe that
not.
is your flavor, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe not. You
Yeah.
have to teach
Yeah.
yourself. That's
Mm-hmm.
really powerful.
Mm-hmm. And it's joy is always there.
Uh,
It's always, I say the seeds of joy are
yeah,
always there.
yeah,
And she's always there, like on the periphery. And
yeah,
if you pay attention, she'll come and join you, you
yeah,
know? Yeah.
yeah. I think even your style is it's instructive to me. You say, which is hysterical, that, people will ask if some of your images are AI, and you're like,
Yeah.
no, I would be less wrinkled and less chubby
Yes,
if it were
right,
AI. I love
exactly.
that. So great. So
That's what
true.
somebody posted on one of my things and she goes, this is AI. This is AI. And I'm like, painfully no. This painfully this is me, right?
And I think your voice is this really refreshing balance of certainly authentic, not AI,
Hmm.
in all of your fabulous ways that you describe
Hmm.
yourself, and maybe not quite polished, but intentional,
Hmm.
right? It's not just a sloppy,
Hmm.
shot as you're walking down the street. It's very
Hmm.
intentional. And I feel like that's really helpful right now where there's all this overemphasis, I would
Hmm.
say, on
Hmm.
authenticity,
Hmm.
which actually, I don't know that that's the most helpful thing.
Hmm.
Do you balance that on purpose or is that just
Well,
you?
you know something, it's interesting because I never realized that my voice was particularly appealing in any way. It's really not to me. Like when I'm
Mm,
listening and editing, I can only listen to it so long, right? But I think um I think sometimes the emphasis on authenticity, like on social media and stuff, is they lean into like harshness, maybe,
mm,
or that kind of a thing,
yeah.
or yeah. And I don't think we need more of that. Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
there's a calm
Hmm.
to what you bring and a consistency and an insistence
Hmm.
almost on this, which I think is solve. It
Hmm.
links, I think, maybe to this idea of permission slips that you talk about,
Hmm.
another great
Hmm. Yeah.
essay. Um, what was your first permission slip?
I think my first permission slip was when I realized that I was always going to be chubby. And it
Yeah.
was like, and I was like, you know what? It's okay. It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what happened then?
I started getting clothes that actually fit instead of clothes that were like too small with the idea that I would eventually shrink into them or something. And then you just, every time you give yourself those permissions, you you relax into them. You find
Mm,
yourself relaxing into them,
mm,
and you become more authentically
mm,
yourself,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So good. And such a legacy. Um, I know you've said that part of the gift is building this body of work and who knows
Hmm.
what will come
Yeah.
next of it, which
Hmm.
is a phenomenal thing to leave behind that a lot of people, we all have different
Oh
versions, but
gosh,
how
yeah.
is that feeling for you? What are you thinking about the
I
legacy you're
feel
building?
like I feel like that is the most glorious gift I've,
Mm,
other than my children, that I've been given in this life. Really. I remember when I was being interviewed for Sunday morning.
yeah.
And I said that, when you get to this age, you start to think about, I'm very aware that people, everybody is forgotten,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Like I remember I never, my grandmother died when I was 2,
mm.
but I've seen pictures of her. My father talked about her, and
Yeah.
there's pictures of me and her together. So there is a sort of, obviously I remember my dad and then his mom. There's a shadowy memory there. But that next grandmother, there's no memory at all. I
Mm,
don't, I think I've seen pictures, but I couldn't identify her, right? So you become aware that that's just part of life is
wow.
people are they live and they're loved and valued and then they just kind of go down the stream of life and they're gone and
Yeah.
nobody remembers them
Yeah.
and I am so acutely aware of the gift that I've given that, the greatest thing to me, the most rewarding thing is being able to give to other people,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And so after I'm gone, those videos are still going to be out there and I'm still going to be giving to people. I don't know if they're going to be meaningful, when after 10 years after I've gone, they may not be meaningful anymore, but they'll still be out there and I'll still be giving.
yeah.
And that's wow. Who has that kind of, privilege?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think anyone who's willing to try it out and be
Mm.
their weird and take the permission
Yes.
to do it,
Yes.
right? So,
Yep. Yep.
and your guiding, I think your example is powerful for that, but also your
Mm.
wisdom and what you're
Mm.
actually writing and talking about. So
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of for these women, right, who,
Mm-hmm.
as we opened, can feel invisible after a certain
Mm-hmm.
age because, God forbid, either have
Right.
decided that they're chubby or are a certain
Mm-hmm.
age that,
Mm-hmm.
there's not a sexual appeal anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
so they
Mm-hmm.
have that kind of passed over feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What's the call to them? Because we need their gifts for
Absolutely.
sure.
100. I think it's to, I would encourage them to think about themselves in new ways.
Mm,
I would encourage them to um, really lean in and discover what they have to give,
mm,
and let those things that we don't have anymore, let them go by. You
mhm.
let them, they're from a for a different age,
Yeah,
and to let that go by, but embrace the new, right? Yeah.
yeah,
And explore within themselves what they have to give. Like
yeah,
it sounds like your mother is, just incredible giver to the people in her community in so many ways, right?
yeah, for sure.
And, I mean, there's people who teach craft classes or do babysitting or, whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think those experiments are so powerful,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a new way to be. I think that's another, this theme of it's not necessarily natural, and that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean it's not there or
Yeah.
real, but we have to teach ourselves. We have to
Mm-hmm.
learn these things.
And I think in our society isn't like our physical appearance and our material success are like they're like everything,
Yeah,
supposedly.
yeah,
So it takes courage to put those aside and try something new,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. To that lens, maybe as we close, again, I think about
Mm-hmm.
this idea of subtraction that there's so many things of that we can add to our life and and hacks and
Mm-hmm.
protein and
Mm-hmm.
weightlifting and
Mm-hmm.
coffee. What have you found maybe, or what do you see that people need to actually subtract to get to their joy, their gifts?
I think back to that moment when I was in the car with the things and subtracting all the things I felt like I should be thinking of, all
Mm,
the things, the lists in my head. Allow yourself to just sit and take away all those
mm.
other distractions and pressures. And they'll be back. They'll be back, right?
Waiting
But
for you.
just
Don't
yes,
worry.
you're not gonna forget about them.
Yeah.
But for a few minutes,
Mm,
just let all of that go
mhm.
and just give yourself a moment of beauty and joy, right? Yeah. And
Well,
quiet.
this morning I was your apprentice. I practiced a sit and stare with my coffee and my little
Mm-hmm.
penguin or puffin mug, which I love. It has a little
Oh,
nose and everything.
oh,
Really makes me
perfect.
happy.
Yep, yep, yep.
And I was like, okay, yeah, this is good prep. I'm gonna do a sit and
Mm-hmm.
stare. And again, I meditate and I have all these
Mm-hmm.
practices and I have
Mm-hmm.
so much privilege that I have time and space. I don't have kids running around or
Mm-hmm.
a boss yelling down my back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I sat down and I was like, oh, I meant to text so and so about Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And then the dog walker came to get my stepdaughter's dog, who
Mm-hmm.
is staying here. So everybody's barking
Yep, 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 yep,
And
yep.
then I sit back down and my tea was cold. Now, certainly no steam. So I'm like, okay, I'll nuke it. And the
Mm-hmm.
5 minute timer that I've set is,
Yeah.
it's like 22 seconds left. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, fail.
Yeah.
But
No,
so I
but you
reset
didn't
it.
fail. You didn't fail. You tried, you made the effort, and it's a journey, right? Yeah.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
And I tried
Yeah.
again. I'm not
Yeah.
easily dissuaded. So,
Good
and I
for
have the
you.
luxury of time. So I reset the
Hmm.
timer for that and sat down. And all of a
Hmm.
sudden now it was peaceful. It was so peaceful. And the
Hmm.
spring is blooming. It was a little
Hmm.
gray. I love raindrops merging. There weren't raindrops, so I
Hmm.
didn't get that. But 5 minutes, I mean, it was
Hmm.
really powerful.
Isn't it? And like I said, it strengthens you for the day. It does. All the
Yeah.
pressures and the work and everything else is still there.
Yeah.
it doesn't, it's not like it's a magic thing that takes away the pressures and tensions in your world, but somehow gives you the strength to face them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It was great. So thank you for that guidance. I'm
You are
going to
so
do it again
welcome. Thank you
tomorrow.
for trying
Going to
it.
keep trying.
Good for you.
My last question, I'm guessing you may not love, but I'm going
Okay.
to go here anyway.
All right.
So the gifts that you're giving us are undeniable and many,
hmm
and they come like, a fabulous, abundant cornucopia every day
Oh.
on your channels. So that's really clear.
hmm
But in that upward spiral, I hear you feeling the gift of having this legacy and some
hmm
purpose, is what I hear. But what else? Is there a gift that people listening could give you, Diane?
I don't know. I have received so much. I have I have to tell you that the community of people
Mm,
that have supported me, I mean, I never really thought that my voice was special or that anything I had to say was so special. They
mm,
were just little survival techniques that I came up with. So it's hard for me to say. I feel like I've gotten so much more than I ever would have
yeah,
dreamed, right?
yeah.
So,
How
yeah.
about a favorite gift? Is there a favorite response or a human that responded that you didn't expect?
I think I will tell you, like sometimes I'll go out and people will see me and my favorite thing that people do is when they just like walk by me and they'll just say, like, I love your content or thank you for your videos or whatever, they just, and that's such a gift because they're not asking anything of me.
Mm,
They're just giving that to me,
mm.
right? So, yeah, I
There you
love
go.
that.
There
I
you
also
go.
love it when people compliment my videography skills. So that's just vanity right there. Because I'm self-taught, so I love it when people.
And talk about a new discovery, right? Again,
Mm.
as a social
hmm
worker, as a teacher, as a single
Yep.
mom, I bet that
hmm
wasn't high on your list of like resume skills that you were
No.
showing off or trying to
Mm-mm.
hone.
No, not at all.
So
I
good.
just stumbled into it, but oh, I'm so glad I did.
So are we. So am I. Really. Well, thank you. What a joy to be with you and spend
Mm,
time. I'm so glad to have sit and stares in my life now. And so I will
mm.
be beaming energy back at you each morning as I do mine and look forward to watching where all this goes.
Well, Nell, you have been a treasure. I
Mm.
so appreciated this conversation. Thank you.
Likewise, Diane. Absolutely. Be really well.
You too.